Hi, and welcome to McIntyre's Celebrating Families Week 2024. If you've been watching our films this week, this is day 4 of a focus that we're having across this really exciting week. And today's focus is around our residential support at McIntyre. And we're just going to highlight one conversation really around that. But before we continue, just in case you don't know who I am, I'm Nicola. You would have met me this week via these films. I work for our in our best practice team, and I'm with Debs today.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me, Nick.
Brilliant. So we're on day 4 now, Debs. We're on a roll, and we're really enthusiastic about sharing these short messages of just something that you might find useful if you have a loved one living in a residential setting, really. And one of the focuses today, Debs, we thought would be around just the importance of having a social life and independence living in a residential setting.
Yeah, I think it's about making it personal, isn't it? I mean, we go back to the person-centered thinking and the person-centered thinking tools. So it's about, just because you're in a care home, it's not a hospital where you have to have things at certain times. Your meals should be when you want them because you're an individual. It's things like that room that you're in is your room, and that should be, to a certain degree. I always think about it in the same as, like, when I was younger. Obviously, I rented in London, and we went to some different. I mean, I went to one place which was just, I have looked at some really awful places, but what was interesting was there was one place we went to where everyone had a cupboard and a lot. And the guy was basically saying to us, well, the kitchen's only available for you between 5 and 7. And then he was like the landlord. It's available between 5 and 7. And then after that, no, I lock the kitchen because it's not fair on my family. And he was like, but you're expecting me to pay you X amount of money. And for that, I have to fit in what's best for you, but I'm paying. So, and it's about that. Do they want the social life? Because that's another thing is, some of our kids, I mean, I'm looking at my 3. I've got 2 who would love to have the busiest, hectic social life ever. And I've got 1 who the idea of that causes him so much anxiety. So again, it's going back and going, right, okay, what does a social life look like for this person?
Yeah. I'm so glad you raised that, Debs, because again, historically, when a cohort of people live together, they can be grouped to having the same likes, the same hobbies, the same eating patterns, the same dietary requirements. But it's so important to see that person as an individual, isn't it? And and like you say, sometimes we, as support workers and families, mums and dads, we think our loved one should have the busiest week because that's going to bring the most value to them and the best. But we know that could be the burnout, couldn't it, as well? This and I think the pandemic had allowed everything just, I don't know what, thought I'd bring that up, but it allowed everything to slow down a little bit and reanalyze people that have been living in a care home setting for many, many years. I know at McIntyre, and day services closed, and actually they were the most happiest when that massive weekly shift of expectation of like a rota lifted, and we had more quality time to go, actually, I want to go for a walk in the park. I don't want to go to day services or whatever that might look like. But yeah, there's so important.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I think about my auntie as well. So my auntie's in her 80s. She's in a care home, but she's in one of those where she has her own flat. It's like a big horseshoe shaped building. She has her own flat on one leg. The centre is like a central hub. So there's a cafe there. There's also rooms where they put on bingo and they put on different things like that. And if she's interested, she can go. And if she's not, she doesn't. There's no pressure on her. They give her all these options, but it's just like she does what she wants when she wants. And if she wants lunch, she's got like her own flat with her own cooking facility, so she can have that. Or she goes and has lunch in the bistro, as they call it. But it's one of those where it's about what works for her. And we've seen with her as well, because like when she first moved into this place, into this care home, she got involved in everything. And we were laughing because we were like, oh my God, she's in her 80s, she's got a better social life than me. And then we've seen that sort of drain off a bit, because it became too much for her. But having that option of being able to go when she wanted is exactly what we should have. And it's what we should be having in the games. It's about what looks right for them. What is that social life? Is it going to a disco once a month, or is it doing something every single day? So my eldest, he doesn't like being housebound every single day. He wants to get out, but he doesn't necessarily want to see people. So, you know, we'll go off to the woods, or we'll go to the beach, because we're quite fortunate that we live near the beach. He doesn't really like the beach in summer when it's really busy and lots of people. So that's like, okay. And he doesn't like queues very much either. But it's about, what does that look like for him? And it looks very different to what it looks like for my daughter. And I think that's one of the main things. So as a parent, you know, in a care home, and I want to make sure that, going back to what we were talking about yesterday, they've learned how to say no and have that respected. So no, actually, I don't want to go and do your day service today, because that might fit in with you, but it isn't what I want to do. It's about them also understanding that certain things they have to do whether they like it or not. So here's your time for your meds, and like, you've got to take them. That's what, you know, that sort of thing. But it's also about giving them, you know, going back to the one-page profile that we talked about as well, and like, you know, what's important to them, what are the things that they're going to really enjoy doing, you know, a list of like, you know, top 10 list of where they like going, what they like, who they like being with, and what does fun and engagement look like to them.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned like that top 10 list. It's something we really support staff at McIntyre to think through, especially if they're supporting someone that their abilities have changed or are changing. So they might be living with dementia, or their mobility might have changed. They're housebound a lot more, and all of a sudden their home becomes just their world, really. And sometimes I hear staff find it quite difficult to think when, you know, what is engaging, what good activities would this person like, and having that top 10 list just allows everyone to make sure that they're supporting that person in the best way they possibly can. And we've seen that work really well for people living with dementia as well. And it's such a quick thing to do, you know, because we've all got that knowledge in our heads about the people that we care for. So it could be a family creating that list. It could look very different. A top 10 list created by mum, a top 10 list created by me, Nicola, the support worker, and then you blend them together. You've got this really enriched, you know, piece of information about what you could potentially do with people to make sure they've got a good quality, good social life, but things they want to do.
Yeah, but it's also, it's about that happy list, isn't it? I know we've talked about this in the past, is that list of things that make you happy, and they don't have to be expensive things. So, you know, I mean, people laugh at me, but I absolutely love the smell of creosote and tarmac, and I will happily go and find roadworks and just sort of drive past it quite a lot. I'm sitting in traffic for traffic lights just to get a sniff. My husband sends me photos when he's working in London, and he's like, the guys have built, like, putting the tarmac down. He goes, look what I can see, and I'm like, oh. But it's about what makes them happy, you know, what cheers them up. And so rather than thinking about what are 10 activities they want to do, what are 10 things that make them happy? And that could be watching a movie. It could be the smell of bread, you know, baking, or the smell of, and so you don't need to go and bake with them if that's not what they want to do. It's about going, right, okay, they really love the smell of like freshly baked goods. Is there a baker's nearby, or like a you know, a coffee shop where you can smell the baked stuff? It's about working out what they want and what makes them happy, and not, you know, and thinking about that before they go into a care home, and then also thinking about it while they're in. And like we said, it's like that one-page profile. You need to review it. You know, what makes them happy this week will change and be something different.
definitely. And one of the last things I think it'd be nice to touch upon, Debs, is just connecting to the community really as well. It's part, it's part of our DNA. Our McIntyre DNA is connecting with local neighbourhoods and as well. And normally a care home is situated, or dependent on where you are in the country, in a community, in a street, yeah. And I just think it's so important that we're seen more than just a care home. We're part of the community, and ways that we can sort of mold together.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. I was talking about this recently with some friends, and he was saying that before I had my children, all of this wasn't on my radar at all. And it wasn't that I wasn't a nice person. It wasn't that I was a selfish, self-centered, whatever. It just wasn't on my radar because it wasn't my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now so as you know, I put on Festibility. But one of the big goals for Festibility wasn't about having a festival that was inclusive. It was about having a festival that other people who weren't in our life, who weren't in the we weren't on the radar, were coming along to a really fun live music festival, but realizing that actually it's part of the community and it's okay and it's not frightening and it's just fun. And so I think anything you can do to break down the barriers, so whether that's like going into local provisions and going to local bakers, and and it is, so if we go back to that smelling the bread, if there's a local bakery that you can go and sit in, it's about saying to them in the shop, like, he absolutely loves the smell of freshly baked bread. What's the best time for us to come here? And it's that, so that when they turn up, it's like, oh, he's here to smell the bread. This is lovely. And it's like, oh, and it's that little thing. If you connect them with something that they have in common, so the person who's doing that baking will love baking and love the smell of bread. So you give them something in common. So suddenly you see beyond the label. So it goes back to the whole person centered.
Yeah.
It's doable.
Yeah.
It's not gonna, but it's doable.
I've got a lovely example. We've been running in Milton Keynes for 10 plus years now, our memory cafe, which is a really brilliant example of people walk through that door with no label, so it's usually a blend of people that we draw McIntyre support, so people living with a learning disability, and people that are aging in the community, just getting older with no disability. And when you see, and I'm so blessed to be part of the memory cafe, I'm there once a month, and you see relationships being and true friendships being built from the outside world and in McIntyre's world. That's just what it should be. And everyone's just equal, and it's just, and supporting each other as well. We have people coming into the memory cafe sometimes understandably quite distraught or emotional because things are changing for them or their loved ones, and then we have people who draw on our support, nurturing and saying it's okay, and giving them that cup of tea and sitting with them and putting their arm around their shoulder, and it's just what it should be. And that's just one small example at McIntyre of how we do it well, but absolutely purposefully open for the community to join in as well. So that's really important.
Seeing how easy it is. So going back to Festibility, one of the things we found was the guys who do our food stalls had never used, they kept saying to me, we don't do pictures, we don't use McIntyre. I'm like, but we've got photos, like a photo menu. Oh yeah, we can do that. Oh yeah, come on, let's do a photo menu.
Yeah.
And then now they've got them, so the next place they go to, the next event, they've got them. And so it's that sort of like roll on, and it rolls it out across but it is, I love seeing how we can integrate things more with the local community, so that I want my children, when I know they're legally adults, but they're not, they're my children, but I want it when they're young, older and living independently. I want that community to care about them as much as, well, not as much as me because I'm the mum, but I want them to care about them and look out for them. And the more we can do within the community and to get things rolling and to It's that finding that common thing they have in common that isn't, it gets rid of all the labels.
Definitely. Thank you, Debs, and thanks for listening to this short film today around a little bit around sort of care homes and just promoting independence, really, and making sure that we're either advocating on behalf of somebody or and embracing that person to have choice and control and encouraging that person to have choice and control. So any further questions around our residential services at McIntyre, do just get in touch with me at nicola.payne@mcintyrecharity.org, and any questions directly for Debs I will pass on. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen today, and as always, thank you, Debs.